The Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing titled Jim Crow 2021. The latest assault on the right to vote. Now, during the 4-hour hearing, Democrats continued to push the narrative that election reform legislation we're seeing across the nation are voter suppression bills, and that the solution is Democrats for the People Act. That's the federal takeover of elections. Here's Senator Dick Durbin and his comments on the election reform efforts that are taking place in 47 states across the country, by the way.
These new pieces of legislation may not involve literacy tests or counting the number of jelly beans in a jar like the original Jim Crow. But make no mistake, they are a deliberate effort to suppress voters of color. This is the reality of our political landscape following the Supreme Court's Shelby County versus Holder decision in 2013, which gutted the Voting Rights Act. Some of the new proposed laws requires voters to show ID and cut back early voting.
Now they're reaching. They're doing everything they can to build the narrative that election laws are tilted against certain individuals in this country, that our election laws, or these efforts to reform election laws, are racist. They're being aided by the media, but the American people, it doesn't look like they're buying it. Joining me now to talk about a recently released survey of likely voters all across America is pollster John McLaughlin with McLaughlin and Associates. John, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tony. Thank you very much.
I'll have to tell you, John, when I look through the poll, the survey, and I kind of like this stuff. This is one of the areas that I'm a little geeky when I get to numbers. I like to look at numbers because I think they're telling. I had to read this twice because I had to look at who you surveyed in this because I thought, oh, he's just surveying conservatives. But let's take this one issue of the election laws in Georgia. Where are the American people on this?
The American people overwhelmingly are in favor of voter ID. I mean, when you look at, and we've done a lot of polling over the past couple of months about, the Democrats call it the For the People Act. We call it the Corrupt Politicians Act. But when you give it a fair read, we asked this in a national survey. It was released last Friday. It was done last week. It says, do you support or oppose voter ID requirements in elections, which requires voters to present a valid government-issued form of identification to prove that they are who they say they are when casting their vote or requesting an absentee ballot? And all voters across America said 78-17 they support it. And Democrats say they supported 68-24. Republicans supported 90-7. Independents 76-18. African-American voters supported 72-18.
Wait a minute. Let me stop you there, John. Restate that. African-American voters support voter ID at what level?
72-18. 72% support, 18%. And by the way, I read you the wording. It was very simple in a national survey, very straightforward. We know this from surveys that we've done since February. They're posted on our website, McLaughlinonline.com. And we asked these similar questions in Arizona, in West Virginia, in Montana, and in Maine, where Democrat senators are that hold the fate of basically the Corrupt Politicians Act. And there's things in that bill, besides abolishing and eliminating voter ID, besides eliminating signature verification, they want to have taxpayer funding of campaigns where they will control what the candidates spend. They want to make the FEC a partisan board instead of the one Democrat for every one Republican on the board. They want the Federal Election Commission to be a 3-2 majority appointed by the president, which will railroad Republicans. And also, in their taxpayer funding of the campaigns, they would allow members of Congress and the Senate, on top of their congressional salaries, to pay themselves a salary from the campaign with taxpayer funds. There's a lot of corruption in that bill.
I want to go back to this number again because in this divided world in which we live, I don't think you can get 78% of the people to say ice cream is good.
Right. It's just common sense. They want honest elections. All Americans, all political groups, all ideological groups, all demographic groups, they want an honest election. And voter ID, which exists in 35 states, makes perfect sense to them. I mean, I live in New York, and they're not allowed to ask for voter ID. And, you've got laws in New York State where if you have interaction with the state government, they automatically enroll you to vote. So in New York State, they're now giving billions of dollars to illegal immigrants based on the governor's new budget, Governor Cuomo's new budget. They're going to give them unemployment benefits. They're going to give them some cash payments. And if they have interactions with the government, I don't know how you stop the government from enrolling them to vote in a state where you're not allowed to ask for voter ID.
So John, 78% of people support voter ID laws. But you just heard that clip of Dick Durbin from Illinois. The narrative that they're building, that these laws, these changes are racist. What's going on here? This isn't that they're not representing the people.
No, this is they're governing by dividing Americans. And in that same poll, when we asked if Joe Biden kept his promise to unite Americans, only 46% said yes. And they're using race to scare people and divide people. And, people don't want to see their votes canceled out. And I know from national surveys that have done before this, if I were to say that requiring a form of voter identification to prevent non-citizens from voting, it would be over 80%. And people, they know that right now that there is fraud that goes on in big city elections. The majority of voters in a Newsmax poll that we did last November, 51% of all Americans thought there was too much abuse in big cities. And now with the voter ID law, or basically what they're calling HR 1 and S1, this For the People's Act, they want to abolish voter identification. And it's really clear. And they want to have all these drop boxes where they can do ballot harvesting, and there's no way to verify who the ballot came from and where it went. And so, like even in Georgia today, in the state of Georgia, which was decided by less than 12,000 votes for president, and was the state that decided control of the Senate in January, there's from the November election, there's 380,000 votes that were cast in drop boxes where they have no chain of custody.
Right.
Basically, 380,000. They were picked up by private contractors whenever, dropped off at the Secretary of State's office whenever. And he can't tell you how many came in Dropbox, how many came in U.S. mail. And we know from a post-election poll that we did in November that if they were in the 14% that told us that they voted by U.S. mail, they voted Trump 50%, Biden 49%. If they voted in a drop box, the 12% that voted in a drop box that was paid for by Mark Zuckerberg, et cetera, 73% told us that they voted for Biden and only 27% for Trump. Now, those are actual voters. So if there was ballot harvesting and we don't know, and if we don't know who that ballot harvest was, sorry about this. I thought I had it off. But if we don't know who the ballot harvesting was done by,
right?
Who knows?
And they put those boxes in targeted precincts where they would get that slanted return. Let me go to another. You mentioned Georgia. I'm going to go to another question in your poll, which I thought was very insightful as well. This was, please indicate whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Before Major League Baseball and other corporations boycott Georgia over voter laws, they need to boycott communist China, with whom they hold lucrative business deals and investments with for using slave labor, persecuting Christians and other religions, and prohibiting free and democratic elections. Another one, not very close at all.
No, but you know what? We put out facts in that question that people don't talk about, and in fact, they don't, the media rarely covers the persecution of Christians, whether they're Catholic bishops or whomever. They don't cover, they certainly give some coverage to the Uyghurs, not too much, and they rarely mention the products that are produced by slave labor in China. And here they are, Georgia's law, the state law that was just passed, actually preserves voter identification, preserves voter ID for absentee ballots. They have early voting. It's more liberal than Delaware, where the president comes from, or New York, where I come from. And they basically, they launched a boycott that the majority of Americans don't support. Only 42% in that poll supported the major league boycott against Georgia moving the All-Star game. That's among all voters nationally. And then when you tell them about communist China, before they boycott our own state of Georgia, I mean, a president calling for a boycott of Georgia is just ridiculous.
Yeah, isn't that a vulnerability for not just Major League Baseball, but a lot of these big corporations that are profiting from the slave labor in China in that supply chain that they tapped into? I mean, as you said, the American public doesn't really have all these facts because the media doesn't cover it. But because of this hypocrisy by these major corporations and professional sports, the American people may find out more about it. I know they're finding out more about it here on the program today, but we talk about this frequently. This could be a big backlash down the road, I would think, for some of these corporations.
Right, because what they're doing is, because of their corruption, they want to corrupt our elections. So they're supporting laws where you don't have voter, or they're supporting changes that they call reforms, that they expand voter participation by abolishing voter ID. So who knows who's voting? Who knows where those ballots have come from? And basically, they're doing business with a country that's a communist country where they don't have free democratic elections. Look what's going on in Hong Kong right now. Mm-hmm. People are losing their civil liberties every day, and it's really not being covered. And in the meantime, the Chinese are basically dictating to their corporate partners over here, how to treat Americans and what to say in big tech, et cetera. I mean, the cancel culture, that other question in the survey, where we said that cancel culture, do you agree or disagree? It's gone too far and it's a threat to free speech.
That's the next one I want to go to. And I want to read this question. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Cancel culture has gone too far in America, and instead of uniting the country and bringing Americans together, cancel culture is dividing America, and our free speech rights are being threatened. And this, again, goes back to corporate America. So you have a lot of this deplatforming that's fueling the cancel culture. So this goes back to big tech once again, and they're on the opposite side of the American people.
Right. And we asked that question before that other one about China, so it wouldn't be biased by it. So they're just saying that off the top of their head right away, that 73% agree with this, that it's gone too far. They're seeing it around them. They probably know friends and family who've been censored or shadow banned on Twitter or Facebook and Instagram, et cetera. They saw it happen to, we'd asked in a survey for President Trump in January during the impeachment process that if big tech could censor President Trump, they could censor any American. Right. And 74% of all voters agreed with that in the battleground states. So, Americans are seeing their civil liberties, their free speech, their right to go to church has been restricted during this whole pandemic. And now they're seeing it as a personal threat to their own freedoms and their privacy, which is a scary place in America. But as they see it happen, if they get the right leadership, they will push back. And it's getting out there, like on your programs and on other programs.
Well, that really is kind of my next and final question for you, John McLaughlin. When you track these trends, you look at pollings, you see where American people are, but based upon these numbers that you see of really a public that's incensed by a lot of what is happening, is a pushback on the way?
Yeah, I believe so. Public opinion is there. When you look at the fact that Gavin Newsom in California, we're talking about the bluest of blue states in California, he's in trouble with a recall. When you look at New York State, last year Governor Cuomo was being praised by the media. They were giving him Emmys, et cetera. This year, to be honest, I am working for Lee Zeldin, who's running for governor, but he's in trouble the majority of Americans, not Americans, New Yorkers, in a Siena poll that came out this week, 57% said they want somebody new as governor. He doesn't deserve reelection. Only 33% thought he should be reelected. These were the strictest governors during the pandemic who restricted civil liberties, freedoms, et cetera, and they're in trouble. Yeah. And Americans they want the country reopened. They want their schools reopened. They want their freedom back. Well, and it's
time to exercise those voices and to push back. John McLaughlin, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. As always, great to talk with you. Very insightful data. Very, very interesting.
Thank you for the opportunity, Tony.